This pill is approximately the size of an aspirin. It contains 2 milligrams of fentanyl. 2 milligrams is enough to kill the average adult human being. The person who made it has never been to the United States. The person who will take it doesn't know what it is. In 2023, approximately 107,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. More than 2/3 of those deaths involved synthetic opioids, fentanyl. 107,000 in a single year. That is more Americans than died in the Vietnam War, more than the Korean War, more than Iraq and Afghanistan combined every year for the last 5 years in a row. In 2023, approximately 107,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. More than 2/3 of those deaths involved synthetic opioids, fentanyl. 107,000 in a single year. That is more Americans than died in the Vietnam War, more than the Korean War, more than Iraq and Afghanistan combined every year for the last 5 years in a row. So let's follow the actual route. From the laboratory to the border to the street, every step is documented, every step was known. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. Unlike heroin, it does not require a poppy field. It does not require a farm. It does not require a harvest. It requires a laboratory and chemicals. The key precursor chemicals for fentanyl, ANPP, NPP, 4-ANPP, are manufactured primarily in China. For years, they were legal in China. They were shipped directly to buyers in Mexico via commercial mail and freight. China listed some of them as controlled substances in 2019 under US pressure. The cartels adapted within months. They shifted to precursor chemicals, legal compounds that could be combined inside Mexican laboratories to produce the same precursors. The chemistry moved one step back. The fentanyl kept coming. For several years, the primary route for fentanyl into the United States was not a tunnel, it was not a truck, it was the United States Postal Service. Chinese suppliers shipped fentanyl directly to American buyers via international mail packages. USPS, unlike private carriers like FedEx and UPS, was not required to collect advanced electronic data on packages from China. The USPS Inspector General documented this in 2018. Congress passed a fix, the STOP Act, in 2018. Full implementation took until 2020. After the STOP Act, the direct mail route declined. The cartel route increased. The cartels moved the synthesis to Mexico, and the delivery method changed. It is now primarily transported through legal ports of entry by American citizens in passenger vehicles, people who often do not know what they are carrying. Once inside the United States, fentanyl does not move like heroin moved. It does not require large shipments. It does not require large storage. A kilogram of fentanyl contains approximately 500,000 lethal doses. A kilogram fits in a shoebox. The entire American annual supply of fentanyl, enough to kill every American several times over, could fit in the back of a single pickup truck. This is why interdiction alone cannot solve this problem. You can seize 90% of shipments, and the remaining 10% is still more than enough to supply the entire market. The math does not work in the direction the government has been trying. In 2016, the Drug Enforcement Administration published its National Drug Threat Assessment. It identified Chinese chemical companies as the primary source of fentanyl precursors entering the United States via Mexico. It named the route, it named the mechanism, it named the scale. That report was published in 2016. The Fend Off Fentanyl Act, which imposed sanctions on Chinese companies supplying precursors, was signed into law in 2024. 8 years. During those 8 years, approximately 500,000 Americans died of fentanyl-related overdoses. The route was documented. The mechanism was named. 500,000 people died anyway. The United States has repeatedly asked China to crack down on precursor chemical exports. China has made announcements. China has scheduled chemicals. China has held bilateral meetings. The precursors keep moving. because the companies producing them are often private, because enforcement is uneven, because the economic incentive to keep producing is larger than the diplomatic incentive to stop. The map of precursor routes in 2024 looks almost identical to the map the DEA drew in 2016. I want to be precise about what the problem here actually is. It is not that China is deliberately trying to destroy America. The more accurate framing is simpler, and in some ways more frightening. China does not need to want this. China just needs to not stop it. The economic incentive for Chinese companies to keep producing precursor chemicals is larger than the diplomatic incentive to stop. Until that math changes, through sanctions, through enforcement, through a trade relationship where the cost of inaction is higher than the cost of action, the route will stay open. The 3 episodes of this series have followed cobalt, a shipping strait, and a chemical supply chain. They are different topics. They have the same structure. Something was documented, something was known, the response was insufficient, the map didn't change. The question no one is answering is how many maps have to look exactly the same before something actually changes.